Let's end the podcast, Brandon, looking at the last team for the bottom five, and that's the Kansas State Thundercats. Not the Wildcats. I like to call them the Thundercats because your logo looks like the Thundercat logo. But for Kansas State this year, first thing I'm going to ask you just right out of the gate, Alex Delton, Skylar Thompson. Who do you think is going to be the starter when we get to 2018? Well, when the season starts, we're already in 2018.
I like Delton.
Mm-hmm.
I really like Alex Delton. I think that what he did in his limited action last year, because Ertz, Delton, and Thompson, they all played.
Because this is another team, like you mentioned in the last segment, another team where we're talking about who's going to be the quarterback.
It is. I mean, it is. It is. It's another one. It's the year of the quarterback competition. I like Delton. Delton, tomato.
I almost thought it was Dalton, too, when I first read it, and I went, nope, that's an E, not an A.
But I like Delton. I think that what he did and what he's able to do through the air and on the ground, he brings a really, really good element. However, you look at Thompson, too, they're both very crafty quarterbacks. But in Delton's time when he was in there, I was more impressed by what he was able to do against the teams he was able to do it against. And that's why I feel like that's a guy who and in their bowl game. I think that he's a guy who's very poised and someone who I could see being their starter, being that team leader out there on the field and being comfortable with it. So I would say it's Delton, and because I said that, it probably won't be.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing, like you said, with Delton is he does come in with the experience already, where, you know what, you look at him and he completed 51 of 83 passes for 689 yards and 5 touchdowns last year. He had 58 yards and 3 touchdowns in their bowl victory over UCLA. Now, I will say, not to give them any excuses, that was a UCLA team that did not have a injured Josh Rosen out there. Probably didn't want to play because he didn't want to hurt his draft stock. But this is one of the things with this team that'll also be a big question for me is they're going to have a transition on kind of both sides of the ball this year because they've got 2 new coordinators that they're putting in place. Plus, they have 9 starters that have to be replaced on both sides of the football. If there's any team that is in this 5-4 mark for the Big 12, the Iowa States, the Texas, West Virginia's, Kansas State, I wouldn't be surprised if Kansas State's the one, if we had to pick one, to just, take a step down. Take a step down from where they were last year because of the fact that Iowa State, they look to be getting better. I know the wide receiver question I mentioned in their segment. Texas, we're asking again, is this the year for them? And then West Virginia is kind of a question mark for me. So I wonder if Kansas State is going to be able to answer these questions, replace these 9 starters, figure out which quarterback is going to be right for them, and have a season that is as successful as maybe a Texas or an Iowa State. I wouldn't be surprised if Iowa State jumps them, Texas makes the next jump, Kansas State either stays right where they're at or takes a step below.
And you know what? I just feel like K-State, they're one of those teams that just kind of holds right there in the middle. I really do. I feel like they are just that 8-win team.
Since 2012. That holds
right there.
Since 2012, the last time they had double-digit wins, they were 11-2. Since then, 8 wins, 9 wins, 6 wins, 9 wins, 8 wins. 9 or 8 wins. There's 1 6-win in there. That was the 2015 season. But ever since, it's been, we get at least 6 wins, probably 8 or 9. We go to a bowl game. And in those bowl games since that, they're 3-2.
And that's why Bill Snyder is there for his, his 90th season?
It's close. He was with Kansas State from 1989 to 2005, then took a 3-season hiatus and came back in 2009 and has been with them since 2009.
I mean, he's consistent. They're consistent under him. And it's just it's the same kind of mold.
Almost 25 seasons if my math is correct? Almost 25?
It's a long time.
Yeah.
It's a long time. The guy just knows how to be able to. When I say win games, obviously I'm not talking you're going to a championship every year, but he knows how to rack up wins, and in a sneaky kind of quiet way. No one's looking at K-State and going, man, K-State, they're just making noise in the Big 12.
210, 110, and 1. So he's got a winning record.
Yeah, because he's consistent. It's a guy who's been able to find consistency really well. Out of that 8 and 9, when you're going back and forth with those seasons, 8 and 9, 8 and 9, and then there was a 6 in there.
Yeah. His two lowest were in 2005. He had 5 wins. And then in 1992, he had 5 wins. In 1990, he had 5 wins. So 5 wins is his lowest. That was back when I was what? I was about 15 for the first one. I was 2 for the second one. I was probably not even a year old because that 1990 football season, I was born in January. So I was not even a year old when they were playing those games. I was like maybe 11, 10 months in right out of the womb. So, I mean, it's been forever. Oh, no, I'm sorry. 1989 was his worst season. He went 1 and 10. So before I was even a twinkle in my father's eye, he only won 1 game. Then it was boom. Ever since I was born, maybe I'm it. I got born, and then Bill Snyder's like, I'm never going to lose less than 5 wins in a season. Maybe I'm the lucky charm.
You're not.
I'm not.
You're not. You're actually the worst of luck for most teams. But what Snyder does well is that he's able to put together these teams and just build off of kind of junior college transfers, walk-ons here and there, and he puts a team together. And these guys are talented. He's got a really good problem on his hands right now between Delton and Thompson. He's got 2 really good guys, and I think that you've got Delton, the rising junior. Thompson, what was he? Was he a true freshman last year? Am I just making that up? Redshirt freshman season. So
you were making it up.
I was. It was a falsity. But he's
fake news.
But he's
fake news.
But he's still young. But he's got a really good problem on his hands because he's got 2 really talented quarterbacks. 2 quarterbacks who can throw the football, run the football, both effectively. And I don't want to say it's a toss-up. I like Delton a little bit more because he's got a little bit more experience. But you've got 2 really good guys. On the defensive side of the football, you've got to be able to put more pressure on the opposing quarterbacks. It's plain and simple. They did not get pressure on quarterbacks last season defensively for K-State. And that's got to change. I think if you're able to do that, if you can bring more pressure, if they're able to get more of a pass rush, that's going to take, I think, a little bit of pressure off the secondary. This team could be right at, again, 8, 9 wins, and even maybe if they're in the 9-win category, try and make a little push towards the top there. And I'm not saying that that's impossible.
It's funny because I see the same thing, and I'll tell you why. South Dakota, win. UTSA, win. I'll go Baylor, win. Oklahoma State, win. Kansas, win. Texas Tech, win. That's about 6 right there. South Dakota, UTSA, West Virginia, Baylor, Oklahoma State, Kansas. So 7 wins, Texas Tech. 7 wins is where I would put it. And for me, that is 1 step down from last year. The reason why I say that is because I could see virtually how I'm looking at it is last year they lose to Vanderbilt. This year you're playing Mississippi State. I like Mississippi State. Although they got a new head coach this year, I like Nick Fitzgerald. I like that team. I think they beat Kansas State. Texas, who you lost to last year, they beat you. TCU, they beat you. Oklahoma, they beat you. So you're losing to 4 of the same opponents you did last year. I'm going to give you a win over West Virginia this year, but I'm only subtracting that because this year, instead of losing to West Virginia, you're going to lose to Iowa State. So basically, same amount of losses. The only difference is instead of losing to West Virginia, you're losing to Iowa State. That's how I can see it this year. You still go 3-1 in the non-conference, and then you still go 4 losses in the conference.
It's the recipe for success for K-State. They go about their business. They have a couple of sneak attacks on a couple of teams. Mm-hmm. And that's what happens with them. There's nothing, and this is not a bad thing, mm-hmm. K-State fans. There's nothing real flashy. You just go out there, you take care of your business, and you win 8-9 games.
And the one thing I will say for people on audio, on podcast services around the world, this is going to be a long-term, like, oh, okay, I get you. If you're just coming in for the Kansas State one, you're going to be like, wow, I could have told you that. But a few segments ago, when I tried to figure out that Kansas State quarterback I was thinking about, it was Colin Klein. That's what I was thinking about, Colin Klein. The only thing I remember about him is during like a bowl game or something, they mentioned how he's a really good violin player. And I remember them saying that, going like, oh, I play instruments too. I find that very interesting that he plays the violin. But before we wrap everything up, any last and final thoughts on the Thundercats for this year? I think this might be our shortest one, only because it's so to the point of like, figure out your starter. It'll probably be Delton. And then they're so consistent, they'll probably go 7 wins, bowl game. If they win it, 8 wins.
K-State, my final thoughts here. What they have to do is they're going to have to fill holes on the defensive side of the football. I think they've got enough depth where they can do it. It's going to be the experience part of it, because there were a lot of guys who left early for the NFL, and now are the next guys ready to step up and take those spots and take on those roles. And then the final thing is Bill Snyder is getting up there in age. Is this his final season? Is this his final coaching season? He's been doing it for a long time. Is this it? And then if it is, you go from having, and I don't know who the coach would be coming in next. I don't know if it's an internal person or they go external, because he's got some of his family members on staff. But if they go external, you're doing something different. We going to be seeing a kind of a completely different K-State team with a new scheme and a new way of looking at K-State football?
Well, this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think down below in the comment section about K-State, what you guys think for your team this year. Also, that's going to do it for the podcast this week. Halfway through the Big 12, we'll finish the Big 12 next week for the podcast. A little housekeeping here at the end. Number one, if you want to help support us, make sure to check out patreon.com/MostValuedPodcast. Thanks to Pat for joining us today. You can become just like Pat if you join us at the $10 tier on Patreon. Number two, make sure to check out the store link down below. You can get yourself a beautiful MVP t-shirt. Number three, go check out mostvaluedpodcast.com. That's where you catch MVP each and every day. And last but not least, you're on Apple Podcasts, you're on iTunes. Make sure to give the Primetime Podcast and all the MVP podcasts a 5-star rating, and then type in a little something about why people should check out the podcast. Want to thank you guys for watching on YouTube. Want to thank you guys for listening on podcast services around the world. And as always, have a good day, everybody.